Okay, so my name is Zach, and I'm here on behalf of Oxford Vegan Action. Oxford Vegan Action is basically the official animal rights group of Oxford. We put on events in Oxford city centre once a month, which basically just outreach stalls, the intention of which is to raise awareness for the cruelty that goes on to animals within the animal agriculture industry and get information out there about what veganism is. We find that there are an awful lot of people out there in the world who still to this day don't actually know what veganism is, and they have a lot of misconceptions that they've gathered from watching the news, from posts on social media, and we get out there a little bit to try and sort of snuff out a couple of those misconceptions and let people know what veganism is all about. Can I get a quick show of hands who in the room is already vegan? Okay, put down your hands if you are not an activist. Okay, so this talk is split into two sections. This talk is based around animal rights activism. The two sections of the talk are, firstly, why the world needs vegan activists, and secondly, how to be an effective vegan activist and what activism can entail. So this talk may challenge the views of a lot of people in the room. Even if you already are vegan, there might be certain ideas, certain things that I say that you might question. And if you have any questions, I would encourage you to ask them. But please wait until the end of the talk. I love to have a good debate, and if I've said anything that you think is wrong, I would like to know that. One of the things that is most harmful to the animal rights movement is when people spread misinformation, because it can invalidate the whole of what we're saying. So if I've said anything that you think is inaccurate, please challenge that, and please ask any questions that you have at the end. Okay, so to get on with the talk, why does the world need vegan activists? For a vegan activist to say that, a lot of people are going to sort of hear that statement and think that it sounds arrogant. I'm needed. But when I make the statement, the world needs vegan activists, I don't mean specific individuals. I mean the group as a whole. I mean the world needs people out there spreading veganism, spreading the message of animal rights. Our society has been so brainwashed over the years to accept animal cruelty and animal exploitation that even after a person decides that they don't want to contribute to that they don't want to be vegan, a lot of people still have the idea in their heads that they should just leave other people be and do nothing to sort of encourage or convince other people that their veganism is theirs alone, that's a personal choice, and that they have sort of no obligation and no right to preach that to other people. As a result, a lot of vegans don't make any effort to get involved in animal rights activism or to defend animals from certain kinds of animal abuse. Certain forms of animal exploitation are simply accepted in our society as a personal choice, and some are not. But the line that is drawn between what is accepted and what isn't accepted at times can seem completely arbitrary. The majority of people in this country are completely opposed to hunting, for example. Specifically fox hunting, most people support the fox hunting ban that we currently have in place. But the majority of people in this country that also believe that fox hunting is not a personal choice, believe that meat eating should remain a personal choice. Since the majority of health organisations support the hypothesis that you can be completely healthy on a vegan diet. In fact, the China study, which is the most comprehensive study that's been done on human diets throughout all of history, actually showed that animal products are related to a whole host of different illnesses, such as diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, hypertension, and even certain forms of cancer can be encouraged by the over-excessive eating of animal products. Studies have shown that vegans live on average 8 to 12 years longer than meat eaters. So we know that we don't need animal products to survive. We know that it's perfectly possible to live as a vegan healthily and happily. So it comes down to, at the end of the day, 2 points. Either The information isn't out there. People don't realise that it's possible to live healthily and happily as a vegan, or that they believe that even though we don't need animal products, we should still have the right to be able to use them. Meat, dairy, and eggs are essentially luxury items. If you cut them out of your diet and replace them with plant-based nutrients, you don't actually lose anything. But because a lot of people still like the taste of meat, dairy, and eggs, they'll continue to consume them. And for the most part, a lot of vegans think that that's perfectly fine, and some vegans don't. But when it comes to topics such as fox hunting, which also is done for a sense of pleasure, albeit a different sense of pleasure, suddenly the tables are turned. It's a minority group taking part in the action, and so as a society we reject it. We reject the idea that hunting down animals for sport is okay, and we support the idea that eating animals is okay, because one is done by a minority and one is done by a majority. Okay, so I have an analogy that I like to bring up here when I'm trying to get across the idea to non-vegans and even vegans who aren't activists. That sort of, in my head, helps to represent my views, helps to make a comparison that most people might be able to relate to. I want you to picture that you're walking through Oxford city centre and you see a group of people gathered round in a circle. As you approach them, you realise that they are holding crowbars and bats and other sorts of weapons, and that they're beating a dog. Nearby, the police are watching. They're not doing anything. Maybe a couple of the police officers are joining in. Now, in this situation, in the heat of the moment, you have three options. Action, you can join in, you can help them beat the dog. It's going to be very rare that someone picks this action. Option two, the most popular action, is inaction. Walk on by. You're outnumbered, they have weapons, and the police are there, and they're joining in. If you try to do anything to stop it, you could potentially be putting yourselves in harm's way. But it's illogical to join in. You won't get anything from beating the dog. And then there's a third option. Action. Help the dog. Protest verbally or step in to physically stop them from harming the dog. By doing this, you put yourself at risk. You might face ridicule. They might even attack you for trying to stop them. This analogy comes across when we're trying to compare to veganism and activism. Option number one, action, joining in. That's choosing to fund meat, dairy, and eggs. By putting your money into those industries, you're showing your support for those practices. Option number two, inaction, is veganism. And this is a point that a lot of people don't realise. Veganism is entirely a path of inaction. It doesn't require you to do anything at all. There is no precedent, there is no requirement in terms of action for being a vegan. It just means choosing not to pick up the meat from the shelf and buy it. It just means not eating cheese. It just means not funding animal cruelty, animal exploitation. Veganism is entirely about not taking part. You don't have to go around telling everyone to be vegan. You don't have to take part in some ritual where you cover yourself in hummus. There's no intrinsic requirements in terms of action when it comes to veganism. It is all about simply not taking part. The third option, action, stepping in and helping, that's activism. When you actively take part in standing up for what you believe to be right in the face of what you believe to be wrong, that is activism. That can take many forms. Like I said, you could verbally protest them attacking the dog, or you could physically stand in. That's activism. So the majority of vegans take a path of inaction. When you see vegans on the news or shared in social media posts, the majority of the vegans that you're seeing are not just vegans, but they're activists. That's the ones that you see signing petitions or joining marches or joining protests. The majority of people in this world like to think that they would stand up for what they believe in. When we look at the history of different movements that we associate with cruelty, there are always small groups of people who've stood up in the face of that cruelty. When we think about those groups, they're people that we take inspiration from, groups that we'd like to be parts of. We gain a large amount of inspiration and motivation from the suffragettes who fought for women's rights, even though at the time they were a minority part of society. Most people nowadays say that they would support the suffragettes movement. We have a large amount of respect for the abolitionists who fought for the abolition of slavery, but at the time they were actually a minority group who were ridiculed by the rest of society. It was only after they'd become successful that they started being seen as a source for inspiration. The majority of people I know don't like to associate themselves with people that they see to be the sexist or racist or misogynistic. If someone's mistreating their children, you don't want to be involved in that. Most people don't want to be friends with a person that they perceive to be doing something that is morally or ethically wrong. But when it comes to vegans, we constantly associate ourselves with meat eaters, with dairy eaters. And the reason for that is that we don't believe them to be bad people. We don't believe them to be on the same level as racists and sexists. Despite how the media might portray us, we don't view them as bad people. The majority of vegans were a non-vegan at some point, and we look back at that time with regret, but we simply didn't know any better. Vegans will constantly associate themselves and be friends with non-vegans because we don't think that they're bad people. And I think that's an important point to highlight because a lot of the points that I'm making might sound extreme. Might sound extreme. For the most part, this is because of cognitive dissonance. Vegans are the minority in a society who've realised that they don't want to contribute to animal suffering. They've identified industries that they believe are contributing to animal suffering, and they've decided not to take part. It's a logical process, but it's a process that society conditions us not to go through. We're conditioned to believe that animals are treated fine and that animal exploitation is a necessity of our society. And it's very hard to break free of that brainwashing that's been going on for generations. But this effectively is why activism is so important. I'm going to go off on a slight tangent in a minute about morality. And now this all has a context, but it might sound a little bit like a philosophical debate. I think that it's important for people to understand how morality works before they can understand why it's important for vegans to stand up for what they believe. Morality is an ethical code of conduct. As a species, we believe that we are superior to other species because we're more developed, because we're more intelligent. As a result, we have determined ethical codes of conduct for what is right and what is wrong. We pride ourselves on being moral beings. For different people, these morals stem from different places. For some people, it's from religion. For some people, it's from what their parents taught them growing up. But on the whole, the one thing that's consistent through every society of humans on the planet is they all have a system of ethics, a system of morality. Now, there are two theories on morality. Either morality is objective or it's subjective. Basically, what that means is that if morality is subjective, then it's determined by individuals. It's entirely down to your own personal opinion. If you believe that eating meat is wrong, that's your opinion. If you believe that theft is wrong, that's your opinion. But through different societies, there will be different views on what is morally acceptable and what is morally unacceptable. Christians, for example, believe that it is morally wrong not to spend your life dedicated to Jesus Christ. In subjective morality, that would be viewed as their opinion. That's no less valid than our opinions, but we don't have any obligation to follow it. Or morality is objective. This means it's predetermined. Some things are simply right and some things are simply wrong, regardless of what your opinion is. So this would mean that that if you believe that theft is wrong or that assault is wrong, those things are intrinsically wrong to everyone, regardless of what their views on morals are. That would also mean that if you believe that exploiting animals is wrong, then it's always wrong. The problem that we have is that people can never pick which system of morality that they believe in. When it comes to wrongs that are inflicted against you as a person, if someone is racist to you, or is sexist to you, steals something from you, pushes you over in the street, is rude to you, exploits you in any way, shape or form, morality is objective. They were objectively wrong to do that, and you have the right to stand up to them and stop them. But when it comes to wrongs that are inflicted on other people, it becomes a debate. Was that racist statement wrong? Was that sexist statement wrong? Is Donald Trump wrong for saying and doing the things that he does? It becomes a debate. The people that that claim to believe in objectively morality, in what is objectively wrong and what is objectively right, often cling on to subjective reality when it comes to animal exploitation. Fox hunting, objectively wrong. Deriving some sort of pleasure from hunting down an animal, objectively wrong, no matter what these people believe when they're chasing down the foxes. But meat, dairy and eggs are a matter of opinion. Some people think it's wrong, some people think it's right. When you cling to the idea of subjective morality, you open yourself up to be criticised on other moral elements of your life. If this is a matter of opinion, then all morality is a matter of opinion. So we have to decide whether we think there is an intrinsic right or wrong to the universe. Is it wrong to commit an act of sexual assault? Is it wrong to commit a murder? Is it intrinsically wrong to do certain things and intrinsically right to do certain other things? Okay, so now that I've finished my little tangent on morality, I can explain a little more of the context for why the planet needs vegan activists. There are 3 reasons that people tend to go vegan. For animal rights reasons, they believe that animals have as much of a right to live as ourselves, and they don't want to contribute to anything that inflicts on that. For health reasons, a lot of health studies in the last couple of decades have shown that there are a lot of health benefits to going vegan. So some people may switch over to a plant-based diet for health reasons. Then the third main reason is for the planet. Studies done in the last 50 years have shown that animal agriculture has a variety of impacts on the environment. A documentary called Cowspiracy revealed a couple of the different ways in which contributing to animal agriculture affects the planet. It makes up for 91% of Amazon rainforest destruction, which is done for either cattle grazing or for growing grain crops to feed to the cattle. We raise 56 billion land animals every year for slaughter, for meat, dairy and eggs. That's 56 billion animals that we need to feed. A cow requires a large quantity of grain to be fed. So that's an insane amount of grain and plant matter that we need to be growing for these animals, and an insane amount of animals that we need to be housing. As a result, animal agriculture in the form of farmed animals has been proven to take up 45% of the Earth's total land mass. 1/3 of the Earth's fresh water is dedicated to animal agriculture, and 51% of greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to the animal agriculture industry, which is more than the entire transportation sector combined. The biggest problem that the world is facing at the moment is global warming. And the studies are out there to show that the world switching over to a more plant-based lifestyle could fix a lot of those problems. And veganism is on the rise, but not fast enough. Scientists are saying that we can have fishless oceans within the next 30 years. Once the oceanic ecosystem collapses, the rest of the planet's ecosystem could fall with it. The world needs vegans to do everything that they can to convince people to stop funding this industry before global warming is at a catastrophic point and can't be turned back. A lot of people argue that activism is not important because it will not make a difference. Lawmakers make the decisions. It's the lawmakers that mean that industries can get away with having a huge carbon footprint. And it's lawmakers that need to crack down on this. Animal exploitation will continue to happen so long as lawmakers and governments allow it to happen. History has proven this outlook to be false. Every major societal change that has happened throughout history has happened due to activists standing up to the majority. Every time it's been met with hostility and resistance. Activists are quite simply people who choose to be on the right side of history, to be ridiculed or hated now for the benefit of the future. Like I said earlier, the abolitionist movement was met with extreme hostility. People died for their movement. The suffragette movement was met with ridicule. A lot of people saw them as a joke. But now we view them as idols because they fought for positive change against those odds. A study that I read a couple of years ago showed that every activist movement has needed a certain percentage of people following it before society stopped ridiculing them and taking them seriously. Every single movement needed a very specific percentage of people fighting for them before they could inspire a landslide change and obtain observable results. I don't suppose there's anyone in this audience who knows what that percentage is or would hazard a guess how many people a movement would need before it was taken seriously. The study showed that it was 2%. 2% of any group were able to inspire a landslide change. Psychological studies confirmed this. They took groups of 100 people, placed them in a room together, and slowly, one by one, introduced individuals who would question an activity. So the study went that you have a room full of people being asked questions based on right or wrong. The questions were easy questions. Is grass green? Is the sky blue? But when you have one subject in a room full of people, 99 people saying no, and they know the answer to be yes, they're very hesitant to put up their hand. Introduce another person who will say yes, put their hand up. Suddenly they're not alone. Every single time, 2% of people. Group of 10 only required 2%. Only required one person in the room standing up before the others would listen. Group of 100 only required 2 people. Every single time they did the study, it came back with similar results. 2% of people needed. The suffragettes, 2% of people fighting for them. Landslide change happens. At the moment, the statistics say that approximately 10% of the UK population identifies as vegetarian. 1% of the UK population identifies as vegan. If we had every single vegan as an activist, we would be halfway towards that statistical number for landslide change. Halfway towards the factual statistic for what is required for change. It's easy for us to say that we would have stood up for activist movements in the past because we'll never have to follow through on it. It's easy for us to say we would have been part of Greenpeace marches in the past that have happened because we weren't there. It's easy for us to say that we would have joined the suffragettes if we were around when their marches were happening because we don't have to follow through. It's easy to say that we would face ridicule at the hands of oppressed groups from the past when those groups no longer exist in their majority form. What's difficult is saying that you will stand up for what you believe in now. Now, I'm not saying that animal rights is the same as fighting for equal rights for humans. I'm simply making a comparison. I'm simply hoping to sort of open your minds up and make you think about these things. All that is required for evil to prosper is for good people to do nothing. Throughout history, activists have risked their lives for what they believe to be right. Many of our world's current heroes actually died because of their activism. Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X were all people who died for their movements, and we regard them as heroes. People have been giving their lives for important causes throughout all of history. We don't have to do that. None of my activist groups, to my knowledge, have ever had to put their life on the line, have ever actually been afraid of dying at a protest in Oxford city centre. We don't have to risk our lives. There's a quote that I like that really speaks to me, and I'm hoping that it will speak similarly to you, and it's from Ingrid Newkirk. And that quote is, "We don't face firing squads, life prison sentences, or the gas chambers for saying what's on our minds and in our hearts. But the animals do lose their lives if we don't, so we must." So we've established the importance of activism from an environmental standpoint. We've established the importance of standing up for what you believe in, for trying to be on the right side of history. I'd like to now talk about what kinds of activism are effective and what kind of activism are ineffective. A lot of people in this room will have seen videos on social media of different forms of activism. Is there anyone in the room who saw the video that was floating around recently of vegans going into a steakhouse with signs and megaphones? Anyone? So basically what happened was a group of about 30 activists stormed a steakhouse in America. They surrounded the tables, they held up signs displaying animals being sacrificed, being killed, being slaughtered, and they spoke through megaphones, yelling at the customers eating in the steakhouse. When I saw this, I was immediately angry, because this is not effective activism. This is the kind of thing that makes people view vegans as extremists. This is the kind of thing that makes people not want to listen to us. And so I decided to structure my talk, the second part of my talk, about what effective activism looks like. Activism is important, but if you get angry and if you do it in the wrong way, you can actually do more to harm the movement than to help it. So here are a couple of examples of effective activism. I've been an animal rights activist for about 3 years now, and I've been involved in animal rights activism groups around the country. I've worked with some very inspirational people. There's a guy called Earthlings Ed that some of you might have heard about. I consider him a friend now. I've worked with him about 8 or 9 different times. A guy called Joey Carbstrong from Australia, who you might have seen on the news. These people have thousands upon thousands of followers on social media. And they, to me, are an example of effective social media, of effective activism. I think social media is one of the most effective tools that we have for activism. Sharing posts and articles. Online videos, very effective. YouTubers, very effective form of activism. Street stalls, handing out leaflets, handing out free food samples are a good positive way to get people to view veganism in a positive right. Peaceful marches, petitions, documentary screenings, and debates. All logical, calm, and peaceful forms of activism that help people to view us in a positive light. When you take part in animal rights activism, you don't want to get angry, you don't want to get heated, you don't want to get in people's faces. You want them to go away thinking, wow, they made some interesting points. I've never thought about it like that. You want to make them think, you don't want to make them react. You want to make them think on an intellectual level, not on an emotional level. You want positive influence, not negative influence. So I was having a think recently and a debate with some of my vegan friends about what forms of activism work. Someone was telling me that I post on social media about veganism a lot. There's no point, nobody wants to read it. And everyone's just going to switch off and see me as an extremist. Someone pointed out that I was posting one update about animal rights every single day, and that no one was reacting, no one was interested. So I went through my Facebook friends and I asked people to let me know their honest opinions of my activism. And immediately, within 5 minutes, I got 3 different people telling me that they were interested in going vegan because of my posts, because of my updates. And it's very useful, it's very inspirational to hear that you're affecting people. But a lot of the times, it's the observers that you don't realise that are watching, that's taking in what you're saying, that are reacting to what you're doing. So if you get heated in a debate with one person, start yelling insults because you think they're being unreasonable, you've potentially got 5 or 6 reasonable people around you who are then going to view you as the angry person who is yelling about veganism. So there's a couple of points that I want to make about effective activism. The first is fact-checking. Every so often I'll see vegans share a post that will say something like, veganism cures cancer, or vegans are free of all diseases. You can reverse heart disease. You can completely cure diabetes, osteoporosis, by going vegan. The problem is that people have read the titles to articles. They've skim-read articles. They've picked up tiny little nuggets of information, and then they've spread that nugget of information. And it has spiraled in a game of sort of Chinese whispers into these sort of unbelievable statements. And it makes veganism look extreme. It makes veganism look basically unbelievable, too good to be true. So one of the most important things is fact-checking. If you hear something about veganism cures cancer, look into where that's come from. Read the articles, read the reports. Get your information from the World Health Organization, from Cambridge University, from Oxford University, from studies performed by actual experts. Watch documentaries. Gather as much information on a topic as you can so that you know that you have the facts. Don't listen to the first thing that you read on the Daily Mail or the Sun. Don't read titles to articles and quote those titles without reading the facts and statistics. The facts are in favour of vegans. The facts out there, like I said, 51% of greenhouse gas emissions contributed to animal agriculture. Proven fact in our favour. Vegans live 8 to 12 years longer than meat eaters. Proven fact by multiple studies. The facts are in our favour, so we don't need to spread information. And when we do, it invalidates the facts that we actually have on our side. Yelling and this is a couple of pictures I meant to put earlier in the presentation. These are the activists that stormed the steakhouse. One of the things I like to think about when I'm trying to work out whether activism is effective is looking at the reactions of people to that activism. If you look at these people in their chairs, in their seats in the restaurant, they're turned away, they have worried looks on their faces, they are sat down, so they've got people towering over, surrounding them, they're very reserved, they're very stood back. Not a single person in this room, to me, looks like they want to take in what's being said. Looks like they're in a position to listen to debate. And this is exactly the kind of thing that spreads across social media fast. So it's important to recognize the danger of this kind of activism. As soon as a video or photos like this are released, every newspaper article is going to jump on that because it sells. Vegan extremists storm steakhouse. It's going to be on every newspaper the next morning because it's interesting, because it elicits emotional response from people. So it's very important that the rest of us, the vegan activists from the rest of the community, to provide positive influence. This is a photo of our Oxford Vegan Action Group. Like I said, we work through street stalls, we hand out food samples and leaflets. We talk to members of the public, we engage in conversation, we let people approach us. We don't come at them aggressively, and we simply talk, we hand out food, we have a chat, we let people decide for themselves what they think. I think one of the most important things to remember when you're becoming vegan and you're becoming interested in activism is you're recognizing a lot of people around you are just disagreeing with you. They're contributing to things that you view to be wrong. And that makes you sad, that can upset you, that can even make you angry. But when coming to activism, it's important to come at it from a logical perspective. Think about what you want to gain from what you are doing. Think about what the end result is. When you're getting into a debate with someone about veganism, are you getting in a debate with them because you're angry and because you want to tell them that they're wrong? Or are you getting in a debate with them because you want to make them interested in learning the facts? You want to make them consider their perspective, and you want to help each other learn from each other. You want to help each other understand your perspectives. It's difficult to commit to standing out in the street in the cold, handing out food samples, or going to marches in London and travelling to walk around a city for several hours. But there are a couple of different things that I would consider activism that multiple people can contribute to that they don't even realise they're doing. Donating to charities, to sanctuaries, to organisations that you feel are doing positive things is a form of activism. Activism simply means taking action for a cause that you believe in. So by donating, you are making an action to have an influence for a cause you believe in. Signing petitions, activism. Taking action, signing the piece of paper, putting your name towards what you believe in. Documentary screenings. There was a film that came out recently called Land of Hope and Glory. It was a documentary that went around screening around universities. I've never seen a more positive and more impactful style of activism than when people actually see what it is they're paying for, what they're contributing to, when they see the facts right there in front of them. It's all very well and good telling people animals are dying for your decisions, but until people see it, they're never really going to associate with what's going on. So I think documentary screenings are an important form of activism. Encouraging your friends to come around your house, maybe cook a vegan meal for them, showing them one of your favourite documentaries, whichever one you think might be impactful. Here's a couple of documentaries and books on the health side of veganism, the environmental side of veganism, and at the bottom we have the ethics side of veganism. At the bottom of the page there's a couple that are cut off there. Land of Hope and Glory is one of them, and The Greatest Speech You Will Ever Hear, which is a speech by an activist named Gary Yourofsky. So, thanks for listening to my talk. I know I've rambled on for about 40 minutes now, so I'm very glad to you for listening. This talk wasn't scripted, it's all very ad-libbed. So thank you for paying attention, thank you for listening. What I'd like to do now is ask if there are any questions, see if there's any comments on my talk. If anyone has any feedback, please provide that to me. You can put your hands up if you have a question now, or if you would rather approach me at the end and talk one-on-one, you feel free to do that. Does anyone have any questions? Yep?
The 51% statistic from Cowspiracy.
Yes.
I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I understand some people have sort of said it might be less than that.
Yeah. So there was a huge debate on the statistics that came out from Cowspiracy about how they had come up with those numbers. The studies that they quoted, a lot of people went back, fact-checked. Like I said, it's always important to fact-check before you look into a statistic. Fact-check that you know that the information is right. And animal agriculture in all of the studies was coming out much, much lower than 51% in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And so for a long time, Cowspiracy was criticised on upping the figure. What Cowspiracy had taken into account, which the original studies had not taken into account, was the section of the transportation sector that is dedicated to the moving of livestock and the moving of crops for the animal agriculture industry. So effectively, you're going to get different statistics whether you have chosen to include moving of livestock trucks and shipping of crops from overseas to feed livestock, whether you count that as part of transportation or whether you count that as part of animal agriculture. The reason Cowspiracy chose to include that as the animal agriculture statistic and not the transportation statistic is that if you removed all transportation from the planet, if you remove all the greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, then animal agriculture would still have to move those crops in some way. But if you completely remove animal agriculture from the planet, they no longer have to ship that livestock anywhere, and that greenhouse gas emission is reduced, so they decided to include that in the figure, and that's basically why there's a debate on whether 51% is accurate. I hope that answers that. Have we got any other questions? Anything else I might have said, or any comments at all? No? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yes, actually, yes, very important. I meant to mention this. We have an Oxford Vegan Action stall in the main foyer, where we have, I believe we have a sign-up sheet. So basically, the best way that I found when I started getting interested in activism was simply going onto Facebook, joining Facebook activist groups, and looking out for when they post events. Nowadays, most activist events will be posted on social media on Facebook. So, are you local to Oxford? So, there's an Oxford Vegan Action group on Facebook. You just need to type in Oxford Vegan Action and it will come up. If you like that page, then you should get updates every time there's an event on or around Oxford. There's also a group called AV, Oxford, which is Anonymous for the Voiceless Oxford, which do slightly different demonstrations, but within the Oxford area. Again, join the Facebook group and you immediately get updated on every single event that's happening. That's the best way to find out what's going on. You don't have an obligation to go to every event, but that way you've got it coming up on your timeline, on your news feed, what's going on. If you don't have Facebook, then there's often email newsletters and stuff going around, but I found just that's the most effective way of learning what's going on. And if you're a bit shy about getting involved, there's always people that are happy to help you out. You can turn up to an event and you don't have to talk to members of the public if you're shy. It's just about having people there, creating a presence, showing people that we are a large group because they take larger groups more seriously. If you can cook, bringing along free samples is always good. And just getting involved in any way is just really helpful. Any other questions at all? Yep. Yes, so for anyone who doesn't know, the SAVE vigils are groups of people who go and stand outside slaughterhouses and wait for trucks to be taking livestock into the slaughterhouse. They ask the driver to stop the truck for 5 minutes so that they can reach through the bars, give the animals a bit of comfort, give them some water, and basically bear witness to what's going on. It's positive for 2 reasons. It's nice on an emotional level for these animals. They're often scared. It's nice for them to get some sort of attention, and it's just a way of showing compassion. But the main reason that it's important is that it truly makes you realise and emotionally connect with the animals. A lot of people film these events and put it on social media so that their friends can connect with these animals. And you don't truly know or understand the emotional impact, the emotional trauma that these animals are feeling until you've looked into their eyes. It's all very well and good having someone tell you these animals are scared, these animals don't want to die, but a lot of the time you don't truly believe it. But once you've looked at an animal and you've seen their eyes, I think then it's impossible to deny the emotion. So SAVE vigils are really great. Again, you can get involved with them on social media. They're sort of posted online, and it's very emotional, I will say. I've taken non-vegans to SAVE events before, and they've said they didn't think they were ever going to go vegan. They were interested in learning more, but they said that they wouldn't go vegan, and they were in tears at the events. So it is very emotional, but it is also very impactful because once you've seen that firsthand, it's much harder to ignore and much harder to deny. So I'd encourage people to get involved in SAVE movements. I think there's a SAVE group that does events around Whitney sometimes because there's a slaughterhouse in that area. So that's probably the closest one. And if you can't drive, then there's often carpools going from the Oxford area. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Training for how to have these kind of conversations?
Yeah, so when it comes to street activism, the main way that we found to let people learn is just to come along to an event and observe people having these conversations. Every so often, a well-known activist will do a talk on how to engage and how to talk to people. The Vegan Camp Out, for example, has a couple of animal rights activists talking about how to engage and how to talk to people. But the best thing I think that you can do is just watch videos on YouTube of activists engaging in street demonstrations. So I would say Earthlings Ed is the best one to watch, and just observe how he talks to people. A lot of the same points will come up again and again, so you can just sort of make notes on those points. And yeah, everyone has their own different way, but I would say just watching videos is the best way to learn how to engage with people. Also, there's a school speakers program that Animal Aid does where they send vegans into schools that have requested a speaker to talk about animal rights, to talk to students about the ethics of using animals and help young people sort of make their own decisions on these things. We find that children are sort of kept in the dark about a lot of things when a lot of the time they're mature enough to understand what's going on and whether or not they want to be involved in it. And actually I find children to be more reasonable and have more thoughts and questions and queries that seem like they're really thinking about what they're hearing than adults. And Animal Aid, they do workshops for speakers to learn how to talk to children, particularly, which is very relevant to talking in street activism, because it talks about how to be polite, how to be respectful, whilst still maintaining your views. It's important to know that you don't want to back down, you don't want to compromise and say, yeah, it's okay for you to exploit animals in some ways, but you also don't want to seem disrespectful, like you're getting in someone's face, like you're telling them they're wrong, because that puts them on the defensive. So, yeah, I would say the biggest piece of advice is always be respectful, but never back down on these are the facts, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. Fact check what you're going to say and watch other activists work and learn from them. Also, I would say learn what you think not to do by watching other activists. If you see an activist say something or react in an emotional way or react in a way that you think is bad, make note of that too. Maybe go up to them and say, might be more effective if you approach, and make notes of what not to do from watching activism, as well as making notes of what to do. Watch the looks on the faces of the people that activists are talking to, because a lot of the time when you're talking to a person, you're focusing on what you're saying, so you might be missing their reactions. So when you're watching other activists, watch the reactions that the people are giving, what they're reacting well to, what they're reacting defensively to, and learn from that, I would say. Okay, any other questions at all? Okay, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to approach me or come up to the Oxford Vegan Action stall and ask one of our activists. If you'd like to learn more about veganism, if you're not vegan already, but you're sort of curious about some of the things I've said, we've got some informational material on the stand that you can take away if you're sort of still unsure about the facts and would just like to learn more. And if you want to get involved, please come up to us and talk to us, because we need as much help as we can get. Our groups, we've been growing in numbers, but the more, the better. So yeah, please, even if you can only do one event every couple of months, every little helps. Okay, thank you very much for listening. It was great to have you.